we're on to our last session, everyone. It's been a great day. As I say, I've learned a lot. It's been inspiring. It's been engaging. And we've had such an array of speakers from across the payments ecosystem. And we've got now everybody on our panel now is a CEO. So I would call this the CEO panel here. So we've got the CEO from Paynetics, Go Cardless, Payable, Andaria. We've got Suresh, who's our moderator, who's from Cloud9. He's a CEO. So this is the heavyweights. We've left the best till last. And we're going to be talking about B2B payments here. So how will the market develop here? And consumer payments is always that little step ahead of B2B, but there's a lot of exciting things now happening in the B2B space. And here's one of our B2B payments experts here who's going to tell us more about it. So lovely to see you. I'll leave the stage to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Well, thank you for everybody for staying behind. We've saved you from getting wet. It's raining outside. We're going to talk about B2B payments. And the thing with this space is that there's been so much innovation happening on the B2C side.
See you. Are you going to stay?
But when it comes to B2B, it's an area that has kind of been, has it been neglected? Is there real innovation? So with that to do, I'm going to get the panel to come on stage. So if I can welcome the panel to come down. What I would say is that I really want this session to be interactive. We have a low bar, which is we're the last thing for the day. So end of the day, as long as you don't throw anything at us and we keep you awake, we consider that a success. So, and I do want to ask questions, but I don't want to ask it on the app. I actually want anybody to put their hand up and ask any questions they would like to ask.
Because I didn't prepare for it. It was better.
Great. So we'll try to live up to the build-up of the heavyweights of the actual event. So we'll try to do that. So look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We've got a large panel here. So I'm going to probably start off with some introductions. My name's Suresh Vajiani. I'm CEO of Cloud9. We are an issuer processor. We are spelled cloud with a W, not a U, because we all know that it can't be fintech if we actually knew how to spell. With that to do, I'm going to start with Hiroki, and we'll do a quick round of introductions.
Sure. Hi, I'm Hiroki. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Go Cardless. We're a payments company focused on bank payments. We've been going for about 13 years now, started in the UK, working primarily with businesses with recurring payment models like subscriptions, billing, invoicing, that kind of thing. We now work with about 100,000 businesses collecting payment through the platform, processing about £50 billion a year in volumes for them. And yeah, very happy to be here.
Thanks.
Hannah Rolls from Paynetics. We are an EMI license holder in EU and UK, so we issue cards, we issue accounts, and we are also an acquirer, and that allows us to play in this embedded finance space, which is what everyone is talking about. Effectively, we are enabling digital platforms, we are enabling PSPs, or any large organizations who want to embed financial services in their platforms and in their customer journeys.
Hi everyone, I'm Ran. I'm the co-founder and CEO of BridgerPay. We are an orchestration platform, an agnostic layer of software that helps businesses with their biggest payment challenges, connected to over around 1,000 different payment providers into Bridger, processing all over the world. And yeah, happy to be here.
Hi everybody, Alan Smith. I'm not a CEO, but anyway, I'm Managing Director for Andaria UK. We are a licensed electronic money institution out of EU and UK. We're focusing on the embedded finance space. We do offer IBANs. We're principal members of MasterCard and of Discover. And we only got our license probably 18 months ago. So it's still in the build phase and delivery of all our solutions.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel. I'm the founder of Payable. We're a B2B payments platform and a treasury platform as well. We connect over 2,000 banks across the UK, Europe, and the US. And we're launching something very exciting on AI. We're launching George AI very soon, which is we want to automate that whole customer invoice process. So if you have any questions around that area, I would love to share more in the future.
Hello, my name is Martin Byrne. I'm the founder and CEO of Equally. We provide automated reconciliations and financial reporting for high transaction businesses. So your fintechs, retailers, digital platforms, and hopefully in the future, not too distant future, some banks as well.
Great, thank you. So look, when it comes to B2B payments, there is this perception that innovation is slow in this space compared to B2C. So, you know, customers are often driving a lot of innovation, and in the B2B space, there's a delay, it's stagnant, and there could be reasons behind that. So first of all, I would like to ask the panel, and I'm opening it up, is it true? Is there real innovation in B2B? Is there, isn't there? What are the challenges if there isn't?
I'll take. So first of all, yes, definitely you can see that B2C-oriented businesses are more into new innovations, new technologies, more connected to the different challenges they have facing different users around the world. When you speak about a business that works with different businesses, his challenges are a bit different. They are more on the payouts options, the way he could pay out, the time that it takes, the different options of rails that he offers, and it's coming. So the innovations is coming there because the solutions are becoming more and more widespread, and yeah, there are more and more things for a business to start thinking when he wants to start building his stack. So yeah, it's coming there.
I think maybe just to add to that, a lot of the time B2B solutions are, the innovation is born from B2C needs, consumer needs. So if you think about exactly what you were just saying there, let's talk about digital payment methods, local payment methods. If you as a consumer, you want to pay with the preferred payment method of choice at the checkout, at the end of the day, the PSPs have to offer those at the checkout. And obviously there's a lot of innovation that comes with that from a B2B perspective as well. A lot of the time that requires an orchestrator, it requires somebody dealing with the back office as well.
I think the other thing I would kind of add there is, one of the challenges that I think we've seen in B2B payments is that the underlying rails don't really support B2B transactions, right? So if you think about where most of the innovation has happened in payments over the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's definitely been more on the card side, and the reality is it's been much more on the interface and the surface level, right? Like the introduction of things like Apple Pay, contactless, all of these things. But none of that works for B2B because you can't afford to pay like 3, 4, 5% of a transaction when you're talking about tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then when you look on the bank payment side, which is the only real other viable option from a Rails perspective, that's just been behind, right? So there's been no interface or way to embed it into the checkout. In most countries, it's still been a very slow mechanism, and real-time payments is something that's only really starting to come to the fore. So one of the things that we're very excited about is that that there are a lot of things happening at that infrastructure level that we think is going to open up innovation in B2B payments, and I think there's a big opportunity ahead for the world of payments there.
Yeah, I think in my perspective, the thing with B2B payments though is that you get the infrastructure layer, which is, hey, I want to move money between A to B, and that's faster payments, let's say. And then the problem is if you want to move a lot of money for businesses, you need to uncap it. But the real innovation, I still believe, is not on the payment per se, but the back office tool. Because when you're making a big payment, you normally have an invoice on the customer side or a bill on the supplier side. And if those things can talk to the infrastructure layer, then nothing really matters. So I think for B2B payments, it's more of a workflow. Versus in the consumer side, is more like, hey, I want to be able to pay for something. I see Apple Pay, I pay for it, and then it gets shipped to me But in B2B, there's a reason why you want to do it, and it's to pay that supplier, pay that customer, build a relationship, get revenue in. So I see it very differently. It's more like the back office tooling rather than the actual infrastructure, if that makes sense.
I agree with some of the points about a lot of the innovation starts at the B2C level, but I absolutely challenge the idea that they're fast at innovation in the B2C as well. For instance, we keep talking about pay by bank and everything else that's coming finally. I started that project in 2008, and we're still just starting to see it. So things take a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that the bit that I always find interesting when it comes to B2B payments is that it's not always seen as sexy, it's not always seen as the one that's moving the headlines compared to B2C, but the reality is that the real revenue in any business is often in the B2B space. It's where the real money's been made. Now, we've got this panel with lots of different backgrounds and perspectives, but what are the barriers? Like, let's say you're inventing something new, you're launching a new payment option, some new service, but what are some of the barriers that you're encountering to stop some of the companies you're selling to adapting these? Like, what I mean is are you building something that's solution orientated, or are you leading the market? And I think Go Cardless would be quite an interesting one, because it's been on that journey that's not to do with cards for so long, at a time when cards was just like, everybody saw cards as the future.
Well, I mean, actually, like for us, you know, when we first started, B2B was a big part of, you know, the early traction that we got, right? So, you know, I really agree with your point about the workflows. I think the reality is, though, that, you know, there's a tendency in payments to just like clump everything together and be like, oh, it's payments, it's all the same. Our experience is that it's actually very fragmented. So even in the world of B2B, there's a big difference between the different dynamics of a payment, right? So when you've got, you know, a small supplier selling stuff to Tesco's, you know, the way that they get paid is very different from, you know, an SMB selling services to another SMB, like take an accountant doing the books of all their local, you know, small businesses. Those are fundamentally different types of transactions. And so what we found actually was that, you know, a lot of the traction that we got in the early days, and still is a big part of what we do, is helping those like small businesses to get paid faster from their customers. And, you know, in particular, that kind of SMB to SMB type transaction. And, you know, I think definitely we've seen a lot of change over the last 10 years, I'd say, in terms of the mentality of that segment, right? You know, if you even just look at the things adjacent to it, things like accounting, you know, and the success of companies like Xero, you know, that's all about moving things to the cloud, you know, having a fundamentally different way of running your business versus, you know, some of the previous solutions. And we've seen a lot of adoption of that. And I have to say, like, if you go to, you know, XeroCon, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit buzzier than here, but it's you know, it's like the Woodstock of accountants there, and you know, they've got there's a very like cultish vibe. So yeah, I challenge the notion that these things can't be like sexy. You know, I think when you speak to the customers, and you know, especially on the SMB side, you know, oftentimes these are companies with like 1, 2, maybe a handful of people working on them. If you can help them to get paid faster and help them to stop like spend their Sunday evenings trying to chase people to get paid, like that's quite a big deal. So you know, I think it's definitely behind B2C, but I think it's moving.
Yeah, there is such a huge opportunity because, as you mentioned, you know, payments being paid faster is just one aspect of the business.
Yeah.
But now running a business, it's all digital, right? It's accounting is digital, and they have CRMs, they have all these different platforms. And often, especially on the SMB side, it's very fragmented, right? They use 5 different platforms to actually get by through their day. And so where we see the opportunities, of course, improving that customer journey through those platforms. And it's not one size fits all, right? So, you know, company like us, maybe we make partnerships with, let's say, trading companies or, you know, Forex and so on. another company will be focusing different vertical. So the innovation in this space is, especially from companies, the small companies like us, we go after verticals. We just want to be really good, focus on one vertical and be really good at it, because the opportunity is so huge and no one can cover all the different needs and different platforms that the SMEs use.
I wonder if anybody knows what is dative. And if you don't know what is that, it's like zero for Germany. So it's very annoying because you can build the best product in the world for the UK. And you can automate, let's say, reconciliation. Or you can say, hey, you know what, I want to be able to get direct debits using Go cardless, automatically allocate them against my customers, and then tell Zero, hey, everything got paid. So you're like, amazing, I'm very happy because I can close the books faster, my accounts are great, my DSO is amazing because I can get the money fast. And then you go to Germany, and in Germany, there's a thing called EBEX, which is just a protocol. And that protocol allows the merchant or the business to initiate direct debits on that protocol. So you don't have to have an EMI license to do direct debits anymore. So treasury provider or us or whatever, you can just say, hey, look, set up direct debits directly on the indirect participant SEPA, and you can start initiating direct debits. So suddenly they're like, oh, that's amazing. You can start doing direct debits as well because it's a protocol, but can you connect to Dative? And we're like, no, we can't. And that's where it breaks, because if someone has file uploader on Dative that creates a file that then goes into the bank, Deutsche Bank, to then do everything else that I said to you, they will be more than happy to take that, regardless of the best product UI innovation that you can ever build, because it is a workflow, it is a back office challenge. And in Europe and in the UK, you have the Nordics, you have SEPA, you have the UK, CHAPS, PACS, and it's just completely different to the US. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you want to build payments company on the B2B side. Same, don't get me wrong, it's the same in the consumer side, but I think the difference is that the experience is a little bit different. Yeah.
So I know we've got companies of different sizes on this panel, and what I'd like to understand is, what are some of the challenges when it comes to scaling a business, right? You know, whether it's about from a product offering perspective, whether it's from a resource perspective, technology perspective, but you know, there are many challenges, but I'd love to hear what some people's experiences of that.
I'll go. I think, look, from our perspective and from a payment software, since we launched, I think the traction is just getting better and better, and also the perception of technology in payments. Businesses that we speak with today either are shopping around or thinking of building something, so it's a different world than it used to be. I think the scale or the challenges for us will always be to find the right type of people to join. It's not as easy as it seems. You could take the most payment guy in the world, and it won't work. So for us, I think as a software, people are and always be the biggest challenge.
I think also when you're building a business from scratch, it's about finding the right partners. It's very, very difficult. You know, if everyone will want to provide a service, but it's about finding the right one that will work with an emerging business, but also then going on further, it's about finding the right clients. It's too easy to just chase their revenue and go after anything that comes through the door. You know, we fell foul of that. Some of the business we first took on didn't work out. So, you know, we have to be sensible now, and we only work with certain partners and clients that are right for our business. And that's the only way to grow a business.
And why did you pivot the business? Because originally it wasn't a B2B business, right?
Yeah, the initial thought of Andaria was to go after the B2B space. So in the UK and in Europe, there are lots and lots of SMEs that can't get bank accounts still. Everybody talks about the unbanked of the consumer market, but in business banking, it's probably even worse, and you know, quite out there that the banks just don't want the hard stuff. And that's one of the detrimental outcomes of the fintech revolution. You know, the likes of Revolut, Monzo, Starling, they're out there and driving the costs down and down and down. So it's now the big banks to try and compete. They're only interested in the nice, easy stuff. So it leaves this big swathe of businesses that are a little bit more complex, directors domiciled outside the UK, etc. So we worked on that sort of business. That's still part of our business. Our risk appetite changed a lot from the early days, but we had a couple of fairly large clients that actually were talking to us about a service that sounded very much like embedded. So we, as a management team, got together and we realized that this is the pivot we need to make this business successful. So we pivoted the business, we focus on the embedded services, and embedded means huge amounts of things to so many different people. Our version of embedded for Andaria to our customers is we are working with major organizations with big either fan bases or client bases, and we will provide them with IBANs and MasterCard debit cards and a whole host of other value-added services in the background, including cashback, loyalty, rewards, that sort of thing, because the last thing we want to do is just be another card in their wallet that never gets used, because no one's going to make any money on that.
Does anybody have any views on technology challenges when it comes to scaling? Because sometimes, there's obviously, you might have your team, you might have your product that's very a regional play, but when it comes to new territories, there could be concerns regarding data sovereignty or whether it's scalable and all of these things. So I know that some of you have got some strong views on this.
From my perspective, I can say that technology is a big challenge, but it's a challenge that as a technology company you overcome. When you work in, for example, we have projects in APAC with some governments that, yes, we had to duplicate the entire software and cloud to their own territories, because that was, the requirements. So yes, you have to be able to do these shifts. When you start a company, you don't think about the fact that one day you'll have to work on, 5,000 transaction pressure per second or etc. But it scales, and when it scales, your technology have to grow as well together and be dynamic enough to be able to grow exponentially without you handling every single thing.
I think the technology stuff, though, is like, as you said, it's like a challenge, but it's the challenge that every technology business faces, so it's not really unique. I think the much bigger challenge is around the regulatory side and the compliance side, right? Especially as you start to go across multiple markets, because you're often dealing with different regulators, especially if you have two regulators on either side of the transaction that have different views on things that are often contradictory. So navigating your way around all that, that's definitely where there's more of a challenge than on the technology side in and of itself, which I think a lot of these problems are largely solved, right? So it's not to say that they're not hard, but they're not really any different from any other technology company.
I think, maybe just to add maybe a problem from a technology perspective that's not our fault per se. I think it's very easy for us to scale companies today. We've got the likes of AWS, etc., that make starting a business so easy, and scaling a business so easy as well from a technology perspective. But actually, if your customers don't like cloud-based SaaS solutions, then you're going to struggle, because ultimately, I mentioned beforehand, we want to sell to banks. Banks want an on-premise solution. They want license-based solutions. So, ultimately, yes, that technology exists, but there are still companies which want to kind of live in the past. Because quite frankly, you talk about regulatory concerns, but there's also a whole host of risks associated with being on the cloud as well. Reputational damage can occur, and that's in the B2B space and the B2C space. But I think that's probably our biggest challenge when it comes to the bigger enterprise companies. But actually scaling a business using the technology that exists today, the tech stack is relatively straightforward.
And I agree 100% with Martin. I think B2B payments is not a technological problem, it's a go-to-market distribution problem. I think that's what it is. There are more challenging problems at the engineering level outside of B2B payments, I would say. I think, when Monzo, Revolut, or Curve, all these companies started, that was hard. How do you do KYC at scale without Onfido and all these other companies? But if you want to start a fintech company now, it's relatively straightforward. How do you make a good business that gets revenue and is profitable and gets good margin and it grows and scales? I think that's where the hard part is, not the how do I build a good code. I just don't believe it's the technology, that technology engineering side of things.
I do find like we're talking about cloud, but there's so many misconceptions about cloud. Like, we've built our entire tech stack in the public cloud, and there are people that think that it's somewhere out there. When it's like, well, it's just not our data center; it's someone else's. It's the same principle, and you can even geo-partition the data to have it within a country or region, and actually have some of those controls around that. Or there's perceptions that the American government can come in and get access to our data, and all of these things. But when you actually do your homework and understand what it brings, the advantages of it, and you mitigate the risk, it's a very strong offering. If you just look at Monzo and Starling, they were the first of the tier 1 banks to get approved by the Bank of England to have their infrastructure in a cloud environment. And before that, we're not even talking about that long ago, it was like, no, cloud is not secure. A physical data center is, and actually, there's arguments about many of those things. So the question I have is also, like, we talk about B2B, we talk about customers, and what about the fraud aspect? Where are the risks there? Now, what are the type of fraud and risks that you see to your business happening in that B2B space?
That's a loaded question. No, I think, of course, the fraud has been exploding, and there was PSD2 intended to bring the fraud level down, which was done on the cards. And now, of course, the attention is moving to the bank rails. Of course, I see when we talk about innovation, it's about making things faster, real-time payments, right? Making things frictionless, and making things more secure. And these three often go against each other. You cannot have real-time and frictionless without maybe spike in fraud. So it's always balancing act. And we see this in, we focus on different use cases and different market segments, because some market segments, let's say with big payments, you want the friction to prevent the fraud. In some, low risk space, you want the frictionless, and you accept that, the fraud will be some, but it will be negligence. So it's this balancing act, and it's horses for courses.
I think when faster payments came out, I happened to be working at Vocalink at the time, so the central infrastructure that manages the faster payment system. It was within a week dubbed faster fraud, and it exploded. Fraud exploded when they launched faster payments, and the limit in those early days was £10,000. I won't name the name, but there was a significantly large financial institution. Yeah, per transaction for 10,000. There was a significant financial institution for nearly a year put their own limit at £1. But they complied with the regulation because they were live with faster payments. Because they just couldn't handle the amount of fraud that was going through them. So by doing that, all they did was just push the fraudsters to the other banks. I'll coin this phrase now and I'll copyright it, but I think with open banking, we're going to see open fraud. It's going to create a whole new wave of fraud activity, and the PSR's new thing that they want to implement this year, where there's going to be the sender and the receiver jointly liable for up to £415,000 for each transaction, has significant worrying ramifications for the financial industry if that goes ahead as planned. And I think the first-party fraud is going to massively explode in the UK if this gets implemented.
We clearly haven't told the panel if any regulators in the audience. So, does anybody else have any experiences within their company or previous companies in terms of some of the risk exposure that they've seen, or some of the...
I can share. There is, again, there are different types of businesses, and when we are talking about B2B businesses, again, there are different types, and when you work, for example, with many, many different businesses, for example, a ticket company. We have a ticket company client. It's a very, very large company that sells tickets all around the world, Taylor Swift, Coldplay, hockey games, whatever you want. Every time there's a game or a show a day and someone is buying a day or giving you tickets to sell a day before the show, for them it constitutes as complete fraud automatically. So each business, have different paths of fraud and that they need to secure. If it's through 3D, if it's through fraud tools that I saw here as well. But those tools needs to be incorporated in the payments, so they would have the control and the ability and the flexibility to say, okay, for this type of hockey game that is going up tomorrow, that's for sure a fraud, and I won't take it. So that's pretty much the flexibility that we see, and technology comes in because, again, maybe technology is not an issue for us as technology companies, but it is for businesses. That's not what they do. They don't integrate payment providers and risk providers for a living, and they do what they do, right? Sell tickets. So that's our job, to provide this software and make the technology gap easier for them from back office side, from payment side, basically.
Yeah, there's a really cool company called Sardine AI, and they're ex-Revolut guys, and they started helping, how crypto companies can do better KYC and AML. Then they move into more fintech companies, and great team, is amazing team. And one of the things I've been doing in the last couple of months is, someone can create a video of myself when I'm going into the Amfido onboarding KYC process, because it's for the camera, it looks real that I'm the right person for the KYC process. But it's fake, right? It's a deep fake. It's not me who is actually going through the process of opening a bank account. And that's one of the use cases I've been focusing a lot right now, which is, hey, how do we go against deep fake or anything that is not actually real, from voice, delay, everything. And I think that's where it's very fascinating when you're bringing this fraud aspect, bringing technology, what's happening right now, but for all of us that we need technology in a way that allows better KYC, better AML, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think there's sometimes this misconception that, a lot of the fraud is really complex and intricate. And we have a project we're doing as a company for a fuel card. And what they said is that they want to make sure that people are actually using fuel and not buying a Mars bar when they get their fuel. Now, something as simple as that, which is we're going to give them SKU level data, so it's basket level data for the transaction. But you would sit there and think, is there a strong business case for that? But I can't quote the exact figures because I don't have them at hand. But they were losing millions on people buying things that they're not supposed to get on fuel cards. So sometimes it's small amounts happening really frequently rather than one large spike for something. And so I think there's this misconception. So I've got one question that I actually want to ask everybody on the panel. And what it is that I want to know, what is your number one challenge or obstacle to your business that's kind of, in your way for you to hit the goals that you want to hit as a company? And I'll start with you here, Rocky, because you're on my left.
Okay, probably should have prepared for this one. What's the biggest challenge? Come back to me, because I'll think about it.
Okay, Hannah.
Just one.
Just one.
You can go as many as you want.
It's ruthless prioritization, because we see so much demand from so many different businesses, different segments, and different use cases. And it's really the prioritization about which niches can we serve well. And the second one, if I can say, is the changing compliance and regulation, because what we were, it's changing, and the compliance requests and requirements are stricter and stricter.
So internal challenge and regulatory. Okay.
From Bridger's side, I think it's very, very mixed together, the focus part, to be able to focus exactly on the type of businesses that are serving you well, and that you're not living your life just serving them, and that's like bad for us. From a regulatory perspective, we are working now with on a few governmental projects, so that's also something that could affect. But yeah, I think the focus on the traction and make sure that you take what you should, that's pretty much where we should be.
I'd agree with Hannah with regard to the regulation. That's one of those things that is always evolving. I think one of the key things for me as a new business just emerging to deliver the services, it's awareness. So we're Andaria and we're here.
I think there are two, an internal and external. I think one is, from an internal perspective, I believe that B2B payments as workflows, as we were saying before, in my point of view, is a commodity. Everything looks the same. Everybody's doing exactly the same, and it doesn't really matter. It's just more how cheaper can you go in terms of not infrastructure, but at the B2B software layer. So we're very close on this new idea that we have, that we feel that we can completely remove having to hire a finance analyst and scale your operations. Like we're redesigning the experience. We're coming from a place of how do we use what we know about payments, and the front end, the experience on the top, it's like if it was an actual person or jobs to be done in the dashboard. Like this is what we're trying to really double down. So if you do have any accounts receivable issues, please come to us. We're trying to do a lot of validation here. But if we crack that problem, then we'll be the world's first collection specialist that automates the whole customer collections invoice process for you. But I think there's a product aspect, because I think at the payment side, everything looks very similar. And then the other side, of course, is sales. How do we, how do you sales at scale, right? Outbound, inbound, marketing, go-to-market, like the whole thing it's like there's so much competition in the UK and Europe. How do you make sure you can be at the right time, at the right price point? Prices are very low right now. How we can increase ACVs. But yeah, so the two things that are on my plate right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone else has said, and I think if we boil it all down, really, it's the economic environment that we live in. That's requiring us to think more about focus. It's requiring us to think more about how we make sure that the team's only really prioritizing the most important things for our customers, but also actually getting it in the hands of the customers as well. I think ultimately, we want to prove ourselves to customers, and ultimately 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, selling a SaaS product, every company was lapping up SaaS products, and there's a lot of shelfware that existed off the back of it. We need to prove value more now, and I think, quite frankly, that's making sure that we create a good, valuable product for our customers. But I think there's a few companies in the last few years which maybe took on a bit too much.
Something I've just thought of, sorry Hirag, if this was going to be your one, but no one else has mentioned it, it's people. Trying to find the right people as we're trying to grow the business. It's a really tough market out there to try and find someone with experience, but also doesn't want a gazillion pounds to do it as well. And if there's any HR recruitment people,
he's not the CEO yet.
Don't need another one.
And he's not the CEO yet.
No. But yeah, as you're trying to grow a team, we've got a team in Malta and we've got a team in the UK, and they have almost the same or similar problems over there. We're in such a small island, and it's a lot smaller pool, that we're having to recruit people in the UK when actually our operational services are over in Malta. So we're having to split the team quite a bit there.
I mean, I think a lot of the challenges that the rest of the panelists mentioned resonate a lot, but yeah, I'd come back to the focus one as well. I think we more so than ever with the economic environment, but we have to be very, very focused on doing a few things and doing them really well. And especially for us, we have quite a broad merchant base, so there's lots of different needs out there, and it's like, what do you prioritize? What do you focus on next? That's always the biggest challenge.
So you've heard it here, scientific evidence that on this whole panel, no one's got any worries about funding for the next, which would have been probably a topic a few months back. So maybe it means the tide is turning when it comes to funding.
Or maybe we've just got more disciplined.
Yeah. Or maybe you should have to be profitable, because there is no other way to survive.
Or everyone's been properly media trained. Yeah. So look, I want to ask some questions. We've got a few minutes. Is there anybody that wants to ask any questions? Please, we do have a mic here. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask?
There we go.
We got one over there.
Hello. Simple questions. How do you plan to apply AI, Gen AI, in your businesses?
If I can take that one, because we're trying to do that right now. So basically, one of the challenges is you want to make sure you get paid, as fast as possible as a B2B business, as a business, right? So you need to use different tools. Maybe use Xero to create the bill. Maybe using GoCardless to make sure that activities are happening. Sometimes you're waiting for bank transfers to come in. Then after all money comes in, then you need to go and push it back into Xero or Nets or whatever you use. The way we are looking at it is, imagine a place where you give us the invoice and George does everything for you. We automatically extract all the details. We understand who the customer is. We see if it's in the UK, we automatically put the VAT if it's in the UK, or if it's somewhere else, you can put global sales taxes automatically. Depending on how good this person is in paying you, we set up the sequence of emails completely automated for you, just like ChatGPT, but also feels real, like a real human being. I think there's the biggest difference where if you know this person or this company is not really paying you on time, you can increase the tone of voice to say, hey, Daniel, I'm really sorry, but can you please send us that money because the credit control team is, on my ass or whatever, right? So that's one part of it. The other aspect is enabling the payment side of things, which is connecting to the right providers to make sure things can happen fast, or accepting payments or bank transfers. And the same thing, George will go and say, okay, this is invoice 123. In the invoice, it was 1234. I have the information from the bank details that is, I don't know, Equally, who's sending that information. So you see Equal, because classic banks, they're not great on references. It can deduct and say, okay, cool, this I can feel confident that this is the money that I was paid by my customer, so I can go and close the books. So that's the way we're looking at it. But the key thing here as well is not like the way I tell you this is a story, and the product needs to be a story. It can't be a chat and just drop the PDF and that's it, because it's not enough. You have to go, and that's what we're really thinking about. Is like you go into the platform, and the whole experience feels like you are the financial controller, and instead of hiring a collection specialist, you are like, oh God, George is there with me. We were doing a product research last Friday, and I find it very fascinating because we're going our heads on like how do we get to market fit and scale and build something massive. And by the way, it's really hard. And so we came up with this idea because we keep seeing this pain point, but it's just, I don't know, like it doesn't feel enough on how we think about the problem. So Hussam, my right hand, he's the product manager, the head of product there. We're just chatting about this. We came up with George AI. We mock up something really quickly. We start talking to some customers, and then we start saying, imagine George, and I just saying George. The only reason I call it George is because my partner's best friend is George, and he's the loveliest guy ever. So you will want to make sure you pay to that guy because he's a great guy, right? But the great thing about this was when we were explaining that whole thing, the customer, the prospect said, can George does this? Can George think about this? And the experience of how they're thinking about the product is not a technology app. It's a thing, right? And I think this is very fascinating because at least when we get the feedback is George, can he do this? So, well, yeah, of course he can do all of these things, right? But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how we think about it, which is not just throwing AI just at the mix, but really understanding, hey, how do we just utilize the technology, the integration partners to really deliver a lot of value to customers?
By the way, we weren't planning on doing AI, but we said we are now. We've doubled our valuation just by saying we don't.
It's amazing, huh? It works like a charm.
I must admit that I probably get AI clearly exploded because more than 50% of the cold calls and outreaches I get personally are about AI companies doing anything, right? AI in sales, AI in underwriting, AI in fraud. So clearly AI is a big, I can see it's a big buzzword.
And the bot-generated emails are so good now that you get them and you read them and you only get to the bottom and realize that I've just wasted my time. But they are getting better and better.
I'm not sure. I think we've been receiving different emails, to be honest. I still put them in spam.
But soon they're going to read them, It's going to be an audio file and not an email.
So I think we are out of time because our host is coming down to kind of kick us off the stage. So thank you, everybody. And thank the panel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. That was superb. Absolute masterclass. So the only thing, though, separating us now from the end of the show is the drinks outside. So I'd like to thank you all for coming today to the show. We look forward to seeing you next year as well. All of the content's going to be loaded onto the app. So keep an eye on the app if there's anything you want to listen to again or something you missed that you want to listen to. And, you know, I'm looking forward to welcoming you all outside for a drink, meeting you all. Let's get a bit of networking. And thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cool. Good stuff. Thanks. Good.